After many long eons of light and dark domination, the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG has seen a resurgence of the elemental attributes in recent days. A rekindling, if you will, since this video is about the fire attribute. But we're not breaking down the good stuff, so don't worry. The petrifying glare of the snake eyes won't find you here. Nope, it's trash all the way down, because this is the worst of the worst that the attribute has to offer. A bonafide dumpster fire. Igniting this list at number 10 is Dicelops, a level 4 fire machine that probably no one has ever used except for the NPC decks for Duke Devlin and Duel Links. Originally released in 2016 as a short print and Shining Victory set, Dicelops would see wider circulation when it was reprinted in the 2017's Megaton pack. Neither of these runnings would help it see any play, because Dicelops is bad, and that's why you're seeing it here today. Potentially for the first time, unless of course you spend your days challenging Duke Devlin at the gate in Duel Links for more copies of Orgoth the Relentless, which is understandable. If you predicted that Dicelops throws dice to activate its effect, you would be correct. If you were under the impression that doing so might be strategic, you would be delusional. Once per turn, Dicelops can toss a 6-sided die. On a 1, it will let you look at your opponent's hand and rip a card, which is epic. This is a very good effect and commonly what people even use their triple tactics talent for. On 2 through 5, you'll have to discard 1 card from your hand, which is less good, but might not be detrimental. On a 6, you'll have to discard your entire hand, which outside of very specific situations is a nightmare. Let's do a little percentage breakdown, because why not? You've got a 16.7% chance of every individual result when you roll a die. So that's something good happening 16.7% of the time, while 83.3% of the time you're out of luck. Actually, you're not even out of luck, you wish you were out of luck. You're in bad luck and you're swiftly bleeding cards. Or maybe getting totally Yu-Gi-Oh exsanguinated in a hemorrhage of hope and cardstock. Even if you planned in advance and activated that 6 prior to Dicelops, you're still looking at a 2 out of 3 toss-up between a good and bad outcome, which is much better still, but not great, because the penalty for rolling wrong is so high. And yes, you could try and pivot to accommodate Dicelops' bad stuff by running it in decks that don't mind to discard like Infernities or Dark Worlds, but if you're already doing that, you're better off just committing an in-archetype monster to the field. But Mr. Logs, you might say, doesn't Dicelops have 1800 attack and 200 defense, making it a decent level 4 normal summon and even a target for Rekindling? Sure, 1800 is decent. Dicelops could actually be much worse. If its effect was mandatory, it'd be much higher on this list instead of the bottom, which is actually the best spot because this is the worst of. Yes, I could have gone with Hinotoma Soul for the spot, but that's so boring. What can I say? Hinotoma Soul has 5 attack, which is the same damage as a Hinotoma spell. No, we're talking about Dicelops, a monster that was power crept by Mechanical Chaser as a level 4 machine monster 14 years before it even existed. Except actually, we're done talking about Dicelops because it's time for number 9. Rousing up a ruckus at number 9 is the laughably bad Toon Dragon and Fire monster, Manga Ryu-Ran. It's a 2200 attack, 2600 defense, no placements in the competitive TCG, and no prospects of turning that around. Even in GOAT format Toon decks, Manga Ryu-Ran is at the bottom of everyone's deck list, which is to say, not even on them. Manga Ryu-Ran has been bad since its release in 2002's Magic Ruler set. So far back that spell cards weren't even spells yet. They were still called magic cards. Despite not having Toon in its name, Manga Ryu-Ran is part of the original slate of Toon support, and this was very inconvenient for everyone. Although it would eventually receive an errata to specify that it should always be treated as a Toon card, it's responsible for extending the card text pre-errata Toon table of contents, which had to explain that it could search out Manga Ryu-Ran on top of any card with Toon in its name. Not only does the Toon archetype struggle with a million other things, but they also have their own personal frog the jam, and it's Manga Ryu-Ran. If you want to learn more about how unfortunate mistranslations got canonized in Manga Ryu-Ran's English name because of Pegasus being a jerk, check out this unknown side of Yu-Gi-Oh video delving into interesting artworks. But back to this video. We'll start with the good. Like many Toon monsters, Manga Ryu-Ran can special summon itself from your hand, which is nice. The 2 tribute cost to do so is steep, but it's not the end of the world. And plus, Manga Ryu-Ran is also packing the Toon special of being able to twist around opponents' monsters to attack directly, unless they also have a Toon on the field. So, with the good out of the way, let's get into the much heftier excavation of the bad. Concerned that the Toon archetype's ability to attack directly might be overpowered, the original lineup all shared the downsides of summoning sickness and a mandatory 500 life point cost to attack. The drain on your life points is honestly whatever, an inconvenience, but sorry row mages, there's no awards for finishing a game with surplus life points. You can't take them with you when the duel's over. The Summoning Sickness, on the other hand, is devastating. The main selling point of Toon monsters are their ability to nimbly dunk on enemies' defenses and net some cheeky wins. And having to hang around your field doing nothing until your next turn unable to attack, that'll end a cartoon faster than 4Kids TV. And that's without going into the further constraints Konami put on the Toon archetype in the form of reliance on the continuous spell Toon World. It's got a very simple effect: pay 1,000 life points to activate the card. But its presence on the field is a requirement in order to summon Manga Ryu-Ran. And then if Toon World is destroyed while Manga Ryu-Ran is on the field, it won't be for long because it's blowing up too. This effect was shared with fellow early Toons, Toon Mermaid, Toon Summon Skull, and Blue Eyes Toon Dragon, as well as the Summoning Sickness and annoying life point payments. So besides being a fire monster, why is Manga Ryu-Ran on this list and not any of these other cards? Well, that's because even though you probably wouldn't call any of these Toons good, they're all better than Manga Ryu-Ran. They all have a use case. Need an easily searchable level 8 to use as a ritual fodder for your Dark Master Zork Goat format deck? Toon Table of Contents into a Blue Eyes Toon Dragon is a great way to go. Need free bodies on the board for your powerful Goat tribute summons? It's a little unorthodox, but yeah, Toon World plus Toon Mermaid will get the job done. Want to actually try for a turn 3 or 4 Toon OTK? You'll pretty much always want to use Toon Summon Skull over Manga Ryu-Ran, since it has 300 more attack points and costs 1 less tribute. You can even go into Toon Summon Skull with just 1 Toon Mermaid and Toon World if you need to. And that's not to say that any of these are the best options available in any given situation, but they're exactly that, options. Manga Ryu-Ran just doesn't have a lot going on. But what about in Duel Links where Toons were actually good in a few different formats, were even great? No, not Manga Ryu-Ran. That was all Toon Mermaid, Toon Summon Skull, and especially Toon Dark Magician Girl, which was the first Toon monster to avoid Summoning Sickness, and as a result was often the finisher for Toon rollback OTK strategies. In the anime, Toon monsters worked a little differently. Instead of summoning themselves, they could be brought out from seemingly nowhere by tributing a monster while Toon World is on your field. Doing so would see that monster dissolve into the cursed pop-up book to return to the field as its corrupted Toon version. Not only did the anime Toons lack the life point cost for their required attacks, but they also did not suffer from Summoning Sickness and cannot be targeted by opponents' attacks. In episode 36, during the duel between Creator and Champion, where Maximilian Pegasus took on both Yugis, Manga Ryu-Ran was able to attack on the turn of a summon, blowing Giant Soldier Stone away with its obnoxious named X attack. Interestingly, Manga Ryu-Ran wasn't able to attack Yugi directly during this duel because the rules of Duelist Kingdom forbid from doing so, which was very lucky because with a starting life point total of 2,000, one hit from Pegasus's least celebrated Toon monster would have been curtains for Yugi and the Pharaoh, and probably the entire show. Still, in the modern game, there's a lot of cool Toon support floating around. It's not winning any major competitions, but Red Eyes Toon Dragon, Toon Dark Magician, and Toon Page Flip Up make Manga Ryu-Ran conceivably usable, even if it'll never be optimal, so into number 9 it goes. Rearing its 3 heads to claim the number 8 spot on this list of fire monsters without any real fire is number 57 Tri-Head Dust Dragon. It's a rank 4 Xyz dragon with epic card art and a stat line of 100 attack and 2600 defense, and while that's going to change with its effect, it's not going to change enough to save Tri-Head Dust Dragon from this list, or get it included in pretty much any deck or any other list at all, except for the one detailing the contents of the 2013 set it released in, Number Hunters. Being a rank 4 Xyz monster is generally pretty good, 4 being one of the most common and swarmable levels. Requiring 3 overlay materials to break out of the extra deck is not so good. For the same cost, you could crank out an Evil Swarm Ouroboros and start messing up your opponent's game in a myriad of different ways. For the same cost, you could actually summon a much better rank 4 that only requires 2 materials, like Castel the Skyblasting Musketeer, or at number 70 Malevolent Sin if you're a Duel Links player. Never mind that Castel's in Duel Links now too, Malevolent Sin was king for way too long not to mention it. Anyway, point is, for the same cost of your Tri-Head Dust Dragon, you could summon either of these monsters or a bunch of other things and still have a body left over. Right out the gate, this card's looking pretty rough on the basis of cost alone, but let's check out its effect. Nominally, it's good. On special summon, you can target an opponent's monster and have number 57 Tri-Head Dust Dragon gain its attack, meaning it will always hit the field with 100 more attack than your opponent's strongest monster. Additionally, you can detach material to select an opponent's main monster or spell trap card zone and lock it from play, but only if they control more cards than you do. The good news is that if you paid number 57 Tri-Head Dust Dragon's hefty summoning cost, you're probably down in board presence anyway. Even with a lockdown effect and its scale and attack, Tri-Head Dust Dragon blows away the slightest suggestion of a breeze. It has no protection. What it does have, that some entries on this list actually don't, is the ability to be resummoned. If you lose Tri-Head Dust Dragon, which you will, you'll at least be able to get it back, and its attack boost will happen every time it's special summoned, so you won't be stuck using it as a makeshift defensive wall. Unfortunately, in order to enjoy the benefits of summoning it a second time, or a third time, and so on, you must first pay the heinous initial Xyz costs, and you'll almost always be better off doing something else. Despite all the reasons to never play number 57 Tri-Head Dust Dragon, it actually did manage to land one top 8 deck list during Denmark's 2014 National Championship. The duelist in question was running Fire Kings and, importantly, many other Xyz monsters that could be summoned instead. But still, if we're going to dive into all of its flaws, we might as well mention the one-time number 57 Tri-Head Dust Dragon placed. Rising again from the Valley of Flames, the number 7 card on this list is not Salomon Great Heat Leo, because that card's actually good. Surprise, it's Elemental Hero Shining Phoenix Enforcer. This level 8 Warrior Fire fusion from 2006 set Enemy of Justice has 2500 attack and 2100 defense, but those stats aren't high enough to make this card good. And its attack boosting effect doesn't quite make the cut either. Although Shining Phoenix Enforcer gains 300 attack for every Elemental Hero in your graveyard, the 3700 attack it will probably land with on the field is still not enough, and let's get into why. Fusion summoning is a very resource intensive mechanic, and to compensate for this, the best fusion monsters are really good. Even better, many archetypes have specialized fusion spells to offset the inherent difficulties of the mechanic, or alternative methods of summoning to completely dodge them. Elemental Hero Shining Phoenix Enforcer, on the other hand, has extra limitations, in that it can only be summoned by fusion. This really limits what you can do with it once you unlock it from the extra deck. If it's sent to the graveyard for any reason, you can hold on to your Monster Reborns and call the Haunteds, because contrary to what its name implies, Shining Phoenix Enforcer cannot be risen again. It's a testament to how bad this card is that it can't be destroyed by battle, and it's still bad, because what's the point of battle immunity when you're hitting the field with 3700 attack and probably more? No, Shining Phoenix Enforcer's immunity to battle destruction is outweighed by its heavy restrictions on summoning in a major way. But let's also look at that 3700 attack number, because isn't this card just a simple fusion of two monsters? Yes, but one of those monsters is Sparkman and the other is Elemental Hero Phoenix Enforcer, which is itself a fusion of Elemental Hero Burstinatrix and Elemental Hero Avian. And to make things even more difficult, the original Phoenix Enforcer shares the fusion-only summoning limitations of its shiny variant. In this way, it's very similar to Elemental Hero Flame Wingman and Elemental Hero Shining Flare Wingman, which is another fusion of a fusion that requires the same materials as Phoenix Enforcer. But Shining Flare Wingman at least carries Flame Wingman's effect of inflicting burn damage to your opponent after destroying a monster, which is way more applicable to a card with 3700 attack than battle immunity. In the Yu-Gi-Oh GX anime, Aster Phoenix hit the scene on a hot streak. In episode 57, he used Elemental Hero Shining Phoenix Enforcer in his duel against Zane Truesdale that he won, and in episode 58, he did the same against Jaden Yuki. Although Jaden would be able to remove Shining Phoenix Enforcer by equipping his own Shining Flame Wingman with a light laser, he still goes on to lose in the next episode after Aster transitions strategies to his trademark Destiny Heroes. This is a notable W for a card that's so bad because Jaden Yuki's win-loss record of roughly 105 to 4 to 3 is insane. In time, Elemental Hero Phoenix Enforcer would receive another retrain, this time a dark one. Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is as good as its shiny incarnation is bad, and as a result has seen staggering amounts of competitive play. With nearly generic materials of a level 6 or higher hero monster and any Destiny Hero monster, plus the incredible spell Fusion Destiny, which allows you to fuse it from the deck, Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer has no problems hitting the field, and hitting the field, and hitting the field. As a quick effect, it can destroy one card your opponent controls and one card you control, and when it's destroyed, including by its own effect, it can revive a Destiny Hero monster, including itself during the next standby phase. Unlike Shining Phoenix Enforcer, which is never showing up and never coming back, Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is everywhere and almost impossible to get rid of. And at number 6, we're changing things up with a monster that has no restrictions on when it can hit the field. Fire Sorcerer is a level 4 fire spellcaster with 1000 attack and 1500 defense. It's been around since the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh when it released in the 2003 set Labyrinth of Nightmare. Like many other monsters no one wants to play, Fire Sorcerer has a flip effect. When Fire Sorcerer goes face up, 2 random cards from your hand will be removed from play in order to inflict 800 damage to your opponent. Hitting your opponent for 800 damage is fine. It's a tenth of the starting life point value, and no one's going to knock a card for doing that. But no one's going to write home about it either, or pencil Fire Sorcerer's name on their deck list. No one except Taya Gardner from the original Duel Monsters anime, but we'll get to that later. Let's talk about how bad banishing 2 random cards from your hand is. It's bad. Really bad. Even cards that like to be banished like Thunder Dragon Dark and Giant Rex are probably sharing space in your deck with cards that don't, like Thunder Dragon Fusion and Baby Ceratosaurus. And because Fire Sorcerer's effect is both painfully slow and random, it'll be extra difficult to deck build in a way that synergizes with her effect, or at least minimizes her cost. If you need 800 burn that bad, just run Ukazi, or better yet, a different deck. And speaking of people who should probably run a different deck, let's talk about the times Fire Sorcerer appeared in the anime. During the Virtual World arc, the whole gang gets pulled into a pocket cyberspace inhabited by the consciousness of Noah Kaiba and the Kaiba Corp Big Five. The stranded digital minds want bodies to rejoin the corporeal world, and challenge the heroes to high-stake duels with access to their physical bodies as a prize. It was a wild arc, where if you die in the game, you turn into a robot monkey. Unfortunately, in episode 102, Taya was stranded in the icy domain of Adrian Redolph Crump III's Kaiba Corp's former chief financial officer. Stranded without a real body, Crump inhabited the form of his deckmaster, Nightmare Penguin, which did give Fire Sorcerer some significance as one of Taya's chosen monsters, since the warmth of her attacks helped her duelists resist the cyber cold. Unlike the robot monkey formerly known as Tristan Taylor, Taya is ultimately able to defeat the Big Five member that targeted her, and Fire Sorcerer even has another appearance way later in episode 219 during the final conflict against Zork Necrophotes. Unfortunately, again, it's not a very impactful appearance, since the Fire Sorcerer is easily destroyed alongside Tristan's Super Robo Ryu and Joey's Red Eyes Black Dragon. The Elemental Lords have been part of Yu-Gi-Oh for a minute. In this case, a hot minute, since for number 5, we're talking about Pyrorex, the Elemental Lord of Fire. This level 9 dinosaur released in the 2013 set Cosmo Blazer, and it has the same stat line shared by all the Elemental Lords, sitting at a respectable 2800 attack and 2200 defense. What's not so respectable about this card is coming up, because those decent attack and defense values aren't the only aspect that Elemental Lords share. They've all got the unfortunate effect that if they leave the field for any reason, you must skip your next battle phase, which is just trash awful. While it's hard to pin this shared flaw down on Pyrorex specifically, even among its fellow flop lords, this dino is a bit of a dinosaur. See, every Elemental Lord has an on-summon effect. Mullen Glacia, the Water Lord, rips 2 random cards from your opponent's hand, which is incredible. The Light Dude, Phosphoridge, destroys all your opponent's monsters, and the Wind Guy, Windrose, clears their spells and traps. What does Pyrorex bring to the table when a duelist makes the ill-advised decision to unearth this living fossil? Here we go. On Special Summon, Pyrorex can target and destroy an enemy monster, inflicting half the attack of the vanquished as burn damage to both players. This effect itself is actually pretty good, and if Pyrorex were a more versatile card, it might have even been ban-worthy at one point. More on that later. Unfortunately, it can only be special summoned from the hand, which means your best case use for Pyrorex is to bounce and summon it as often as you can. If you're trying this, make sure to send a silly little prayer up to Slifer that the burn will be enough to topple your opponent, because you'll definitely never see a battle phase again. So why do the Elemental Lords skip the battle phase anyway? What makes them so potentially broken that they all need that effect? Well, they have pretty strict summoning conditions that still allow them to the board at no cost. You don't have to banish anything from the grave or dedicate your normal summon. As long as you have exactly 5 monsters in the grave that share their attribute and no more, no less, the Elemental Lords can special summon themselves from your hand. A special summon at no cost is a fantastic foundation for a line of staple extenders, and getting to activate strong effects on summon would just make them too good to go unpunished. So bring on the battle phase skip. The cost of the Elemental Lords are in the strings that come attached. Earlier, we claimed that with a little adjustment, Pyrorex's pop and burn effect could be ban-worthy. Actually, all the Elemental Lord effects could be ban-worthy, because they're all inspired by classic cards that were banned for stretches of time. Mullen Glacia's discard effect is a retrain of Delinquent Duo, a card that was first banned in 2004, brought back to limited for one format, and then immediately rebanned forever starting in 2005. The board breakers, Phosphorage and Windrose, are Raigeki and Harpy's Feather Duster, and the art of these two classics becoming the basis for the respective attributes of the Elemental Lords. Grand Soil, the Elemental Lord, embodies Monster Reborn, and Umbra Mirage, the Elemental Lord search effect, mirrors Sangan. So what then for Pyrorex? That would be the Ring of Destruction card, the iconic normal trap that caught a short ban in 2005 and then a way longer one in 2006, only finding its way back into the game in 2015 when the power level of the game had progressed enough that its presence wasn't game-breaking, and because it got an errata. Still, Ring of Destruction saw competitive play immediately after shedding its forbidden status, and Pyrorex has continued to never. What's up with that? The short answer is that the Elemental Lords are so clunky and difficult to use that they make trap cards look fast and versatile, and that's just a sad thing to have to say. Perhaps noting that this line of high rarity bosses was basically unplayable, Konami would print a sister archetype intended to reduce the migraine of running Elemental Lords to a light headache, as well as manipulate your grave to let you potentially run multiple Elemental Lords in a single deck. The idea was that in addition to other effects, every Elemental Saber in your graveyard could declare a new attribute for itself once per turn. This lets you pretty easily meet and not exceed the frustratingly specific Elemental Lord summoning requirements of having 5 same attributes in the grave. The Elemental Sabers would indeed see some experimentation, but not for synergies with their Spirit Godmasters, who crumbled to everything from Smashing Ground to Man-Eater Bug. What play the Elemental Sabers did see mostly revolved around light and dark support to enable cards like Dark Dragoon, and easily meet the requirements for the monsters like Blacklisted Soldier and Envoy at the beginning. They're also not a bad foundation for pulling off a mean activation of Saryuja's Skuldred. But in Duel Links, the Elemental Lords were bad too. The Elemental Sabers, on the other hand, saw a large amount of play, particularly in Invoke decks, which were very powerful at the time. The level 9 Fire Pyro that's taking spot number 4 on this list holds an important spot in Yu-Gi-Oh history, even if it never had any competitive relevance. Yep. It's a cover card from the first pair of Yu-Gi-Oh! Structure decks that released way back in 2005, Infernal Flame Emperor of Structure Deck Blaze of Destruction fame. Interestingly, it would be released 18 years later in another Structure Deck, which was 2023 Structure Deck Fire Kings, with a limited circulation in the World Championship 2010 card pack to bridge the two printings. It's got 27 in attack and 6 in defense, but don't let that stat line fool you. This card is bad and you'd be a fool to run it. Let's get what's bad about Infernal Flame Emperor out of the way at the start. This card cannot be special summoned. It's kind of like Elemental Hero Shining Phoenix Enforcer in that once it's on the field, it's never getting back. But unlike Shining Phoenix Enforcer, it's also going to clog up your main deck. What actually happens when you play it can be pretty okay, and even situationally good, since Infernal Flame Emperor can banish up to 5 fire monsters from the grave on Tribute Summon, and then destroy back row equal to the number of banished cards. Now, what's sad about Infernal Flame Emperor is that this card would be fine and might actually see play if it could be special summoned and activate its effect that way. Already, the extent of this removal will be limited by the necessity of keeping your grave stocked, and that's what's most painful about Infernal Flame Emperor. It's one of Yu-Gi-Oh's classic structure deck bosses that doubles up as both the first level 9 fire monster and the first level 9 pyro, and it's so close to being decent. Infernal Flame Emperor and its killer design both deserve better than a high cost, but impactful effect, ruined by tricky summoning requirements. But Infernal Flame Emperor at least got to see the screen in episode 109 of the Yu-Gi-Oh GX anime, where it was used by Axel Brody against Jaden Yuki. It'd go on to get one more appearance later in the series, but we'll actually cover that with the next entry. Speaking of, hey, everybody look, it's another Infernal monster that's bad. Infernal Incinerator released in 2005's Elemental Energy and takes an easy number 3 on this list. And seriously, what's up with all of these bad Infernals? At least Extra Hero Inferno Devicer and Infernal Queen Salmon have useful effects, but we're not talking about them. Nope, it's all Infernal Incinerator all day, or for the next few minutes before we do what every duelist does after considering Infernal Incinerator. Moving on, it's got 2800 attack and 800 defense, but in what has become a trend that's going to continue, that's not enough to justify its staggeringly bad effect. This level 6 Fiend looks pretty scary, but if you see it coming after you, you're probably fine. Like many of the cards on this list, it's got specific summon requirements. It needs you to discard your entire hand and tribute a monster with 2000 or more attack for a normal summon, but it has a good effect to justify that cost, right? It does not. Infernal Incinerator gains 200 attack for every monster your opponent controls and loses 500 attack for every monster you control. Honestly, it doesn't even need the stacking 500 attack loss. Just the cost alone for not enough upside would be enough to justify putting Infernal Incinerator on this list, but no, it's gotta be worse. And it's way up here at number 3 because being bad is the one thing Infernal Incinerator is good at. Despite majorly sucking, Infernal Incinerator does have a few anime appearances. It was mostly used by Chaz Princeton, where it was instrumental to his defeat at the hands of Bastion Misawa in episode 12 of the Yu-Gi-Oh GX anime. Bastion's Water Dragon found something else about Infernal Incinerator to counter, and used its fire typing to drop its attack to 0. It'd go on to be used a couple more times by Chaz and once by Yubel. In episode 155, Yubel attempted the ultimate fusion summon using one of each levels, where Infernal Incinerator was used as the level 6 pick. Infernal Flame Emperor was selected to stand in for level 9, bringing these two Infernals together in a way that no one asked for and no one wanted. And burning down the house in this list's number 2 spot is no one's favorite level 10 Fire Devil, the Ultimate Obedient Fiend. Originally made available in 2003's Magician 4 set, it was reprinted for some reason in 2005's Dark Revelation 1, and it hasn't seen any additional reprints for reasons we'll be digging into presently. While it does have the stat line of an absolutely ultimate unit at 3500 attack and 3000 defense, those numbers come bundled with a pretty terrible effect. It can only attack if it's the only card on your side of the field when you have an empty hand. It does carry the perk of negating the effects of monsters destroyed by battle, but who cares about that because you'll never see it, and that is a challenge. Get on the Master Duel ladder, prove me wrong, and flex how you did it. Did someone say Ultimate Obedient Fiend skill drain 10 Yi? Even the name of this creature is ridiculous, because it will only attack when it's alone. That's setting a pretty low bar for obedience. It's not difficult to see why this card is bad, and yeah, you can go out of your way to fix it temporarily with cards like Forbidden Chalice and Skill Drain, but until Konami goes out of its way to print card-specific support, Ultimate Obedient Fiend will be more trouble than it's worth. And since this hasn't happened in over 20 years, well, never say never. After all, it is being mentioned in a TheDuelLogs video right now, so there's hope, but probably don't hold your breath. Shockingly, in December of 2004, Ultimate Obedient Fiend did see the barest smattering of competitive placements in the TCG. An absolute mad lad duelist named Henry Key embraced the heart of the cards by sliding in not one, but 2 copies of Ultimate Obedient Fiend in the side deck. Likely these cards were intended to use with Catapult Turtle for a mean 1750 burn, or as a desperate ploy for turnover victory after the effect of last turn, which was legal at the time, and also found a place in Henry Key's side deck. Despite this inventive appearance in someone's deck list from about 2 decades ago, Ultimate Obedient Fiend has a high spot on this list, locked down for being costly to summon, even harder to use, and easy to remove. That's a trifecta of bad that's difficult to rival, and it's even in its name. He's the ultimate, or at least would be if not for the actual number 1 pick on this list. But before opening that uniquely egregious can of worms, we got a few fiery honorable mentions that easily could have landed on this list, but didn't. Elemental Hero Inferno, Dragon Piper, Burning Algae, and Guardian Seal are all trash tier awful, but share one important distinction. They were all talked about in the top 10 worst Pyro Monsters video. Jigen Bakudon would have been another shoo-in, but it's already appeared on a few other videos. In an effort to keep things fun and interesting, these strong, and by that I mean weak, candidates were removed from consideration, but they're still so bad. Too good in their badness to escape mention entirely, so here they are, mentioned honorably. And here we are, the number worst fire monster. It's that guy, literally. Aitsu is a level 5 normal monster with 100 attack and 100 defense, with a name that literally translates to that guy way over there. Originally printed as a common in 2003's Magician 4 set, Aitsu received a reprint in Dark Revelations 1 back in 2005, after which he'd go on to never be reprinted again, unless Konami shatters all expectations. Go ahead, Konami, make that guy's day. He's actually part of an archetype of 4 nondescript dudes who are Soitsu, Koitsu, and Doitsu, which very, very loosely translate to that guy over there, this guy over here, and which guy? There's 2 component words where the first sound is an indication of distance and the second is an indication of the presence of a guy. In this case, ko means close to the speaker. So means close to the person to whom the speaker is speaking. Pronounced not close to anyone participating in the conversation, and do is a question sound that indicates a vagueness in the location of said guy. What all these casual references share is a lack of formality that suggests said interactions occur either between good friends or in a place of spiny neutralness to outright hostility. This is a vibe match for Aitsu and Soitsu's flavor text. With Aitsu's reading, he seems to be very unreliable, but he might have incredible potential. Soitsu's description is apparently totally unreliable. He wonders if he has incredible potential. Even their flavor text is skeptical of these guys. And with such poor stats, we have every reason to be skeptical. But actually, Aitsu does have a bit of history. Both Aitsu and the fellow guy Koitsu are characters from a Konami horizontal scrolling shooter arcade game called Sexy Parodius, the risque 5th installment in the Parodius franchise, which itself is a parody of a different space shooter known as Gradius. Several other cards actually reference these games, including Gradius, Lord British Space Fighter, and Vic Viper T301. The Aitsu gang appear working together in a number of other cards, including a Team Trap Disposal Unit, Fossil Excavation, Fossil Dig, Gravity Collapse, and Skydiving Field, but enough dallying. It's time to get serious, which is probably something Aitsu has never said in his life. Let's talk about his impact on the competitive scene. And we're done talking about Aitsu's impact on the competitive scene. So what are you supposed to do with Aitsu other than lose immediately? What is his reference incredible potential? Well, he's intended to work with Koitsu, a level 10 water fairy with 200 attack and 100 defense. Koitsu can equip itself as a union monster to Aitsu, causing Aitsu to gain a decent 3000 attack. This also grants the empowered Aitsu piercing damage, which isn't half bad. 3100 is a considerable attack threshold and piercing rocks. So what's the problem? There are several. The resource required to actually utilize this combo are expensive. Aitsu must be summoned, and it's a high level monster with no effect. If it were level 4, you could at least shoot it out of the deck with Unexpected Die and equip Koitsu from your hand, but because it's not, you'll either have to tribute, modify its level with another card, or special summon it in some other way. No matter how you shake it, uniting both Aitsu and Koitsu on the field is going to be inconvenient, and the best case scenario for these cards would never be mistaken for anything other than very bad. But in the context of this list, Aitsu is great, because as the worst fire monster, he'll realize his incredible potential at last and take number 1. Alright, and that's the list. But there are so many bad Yu-Gi-Oh cards out there. If I missed your favorite flop fire monster, or if you have more ideas for future videos just like this one, I'd love to build them down in the comments.